Black America as the balance of power for positive change. Matters of culture, identity, and consciousness. First and foremost, so-called Black America and its subculture is not part of the melting pot. From one generation to another, so-called Black Americans have been living in two distinct subcultures, which for historical, categorical, and interactive reasons will remain distinct, even in the context of integration. This has major implications in terms of consciousness, identity, and politics. From a cultural point of view, there may be some similarity with new immigrants from other parts of the world, where individuals live in two cultures, but that usually ends after several generations. That is not the case with so-called Black America. For those who exist in a monoculture, it is almost impossible to imagine what it is like being in two distinct, different subcultures simultaneously. Especially two different subcultures that have many points in conflict, wherein one is often both the protagonist and the antagonists in one's own personal being. The question of the individual identity of so-called Black Americans, as well as Black America in general, is defined in the question, who am I? And who are we? Both the individual and the collective identities of so-called Black Americans can be described as a shifting ground of perplexity, contradictions, and perhaps, at times, confusion. Are we Africans? Are we merely the descendants of slaves? Or are we indigenous Americans with roots that precede European colonialization? In more contemporary times, the names and labels of our identity by what we are supposed to call ourselves and what others are supposed to call us keep changing. In the last 100 years, we have gone from copper-colored to Negro to Black to African American, and maybe soon back to copper-colored. Nowhere in history, and in such a short period of time, have any people had to change their name so often. What does that do to one's personal sense of identity? How does one deal with such a shifting of identity labels? Then there is the sense of identity in cultural activity. In music, at the turn of the 20th century, there were Negro spirituals. Then ragtime was introduced, and later jazz. These are huge shifts in musical culture, as well as huge shifts in the sound coloration of one's psychological and spiritual interior. Who am I? What am I? What do I call myself? How secure can one be in oneself if that is changing all the time? Externally, there is the cancel culture of Black codes and the negation of rights and privileges externally imposed from the larger subculture. If we did not live in a racist society, such questions would never be asked on any form. Who created the racial categories? Is Black Lives Matter campaigning to remove such questions on all forms? The essential question in analyzing this is to ask if there is any quality in the so-called Black American subculture which has the potential of assisting the youthful promotion of an effective and positive contract with so-called Black America.